What's up, nerds? How y'all doing?
People who claim they're abducted by aliens.
Well, so it sounds like your epistemology, because if you notice my opening statement, I didn't use like natural, supernatural. I used usual, unusual. Because like alien abduction, that's a natural occurrence.
Well, what's the difference between, like, there are plenty of things that are unusual in my life, but usual and unusual. Unusual is like, that's a wide spectrum to go from, hey, it's unusual for somebody to win the lottery, even though it happens all the time.
Well,
somebody was raised from the dead.
I guess, like, what do alien abductions, resurrection claims, it seems like what they have in common is they're disputed and they don't happen very often. That seems to be like just basically what they have in common. So like, what would we use to determine, like when would it be reasonable for someone to think they had an encounter with an extraterrestrial being, I guess?
I don't know what it would take. See, here's the thing. We're talking about two different things.
I don't know what
would it take for, like, if I had an experience that I was convinced was being abducted by aliens, that is independent from what it would take for you to believe that I actually was abducted by aliens.
Okay, I mean, what if you you told me you had been abducted by aliens, and you called me, and like I talked to you at 9 o'clock at night, and you're in Texas, and then you call me at 3 a.m. and you say I was abducted by aliens, and they dropped me off in Tokyo, and like,
well, hang on,
an airline ticket.
You just invented something that has potential physical evidence that's completely different. You added something to the story. Well,
I'd be adding more testimony. Like, there'd be people who would say, like, I saw Matt, your Japanese fans be like, I saw Matt Dillahunty in Tokyo. And, you know.
But it's not just, oh, I saw Matt in Tokyo. We could prove that I was in Tokyo.
Okay.
So this whole debate is over the nature of evidence and proofs, ultimately. So that's where they're just kind of going in circles. And that I hope if Trent doesn't really get to a point here, we're going to have to call it a night, because it's already 2. I'm having a lot of fun. I mean, I'm still ready to go. I'm still energized, and I will be energized, ready to go tomorrow, Lord willing. But I'm going to have to get some sleep, and I don't think Matt's going to recover from this very well.
So okay, let's just say we have the physical evidence there. Would you then be allowed to go through this reasoning process? I can't provide explanation for how I got to Tokyo, so it must be an extraterrestrial explanation.
No, that's a fallacy.
Well, then how would you, would that circumstance with the physical evidence convince you you'd been abducted?
No.
It wouldn't.
No, if my position is I don't have an explanation for how this happened, I don't get to invent one, and I don't get to claim it's aliens or angels or gods or demons or anything. If I don't have an explanation, then I don't have an explanation. And as much as that sucks, that's the truth.
So even if, like, there was like Independence Day spaceships over the Earth, would that, I mean, I'm picking aliens because I'm just saying this isn't a natural, supernatural question. I'm trying to figure out, like you say, we don't have sufficient evidence for the resurrection, but if you can't tell me what the sufficient evidence is, like what would be sufficient evidence? Like, if I guess here, I'll ask this question and you can rip it apart if you want.
Okay.
Is your position that you have no idea what sufficient evidence for the resurrection looks like, but you're confident you haven't seen such evidence?
Correct. In the same way that this is asked to me quite often about, you know, what would change your mind about God? And my answer is, I don't know what would change my mind. Because it would be arrogant of me to presume that I have the understanding of reality to be able to tell the difference between a real God and a fake God. Or
this is the feigned humility that they always try to appeal to, like that their position is the, you know, measured, you know, skeptical one, and I'm not arrogant, so I'm not going to try to claim. But Matt doesn't understand that the dogmatism that he propounds actually assumes and makes all kinds of metaphysical dogmatic claims, and basically basically slants the evidence such that there is no evidence that Matt would accept, is what this amounts to. And so Trent's inadvertently, I think, getting to the point of presuppositionalism, which is that the problem of the atheist is not a lack of evidence. It's a bad will. And that's what Romans 1 says. Men aren't lacking in facts and evidence. In fact, they misinterpret the facts and evidence willfully, according to Romans 1.
Some being this just powerful enough, or a strong delusion, or an evil demon, or whatever else.
Sure.
But if there is a God, that God absolutely knows what would convince me and has not provided that evidence yet.
Okay. But then here's my follow-up question. If you don't know what the sufficient evidence looks like, you have no idea what it looks like, how can you be convinced you haven't seen it? Because what if you failed to recognize it? It'd be like if I...
This is actually a good point, right? Because Matt has not ever given a consistent, coherent theory of evidences and proofs, and what is the sufficient evidence and proof that's necessary. And yet he keeps saying that there is no proof, that I haven't seen it, I can't find it, we don't know it, nobody knows, it's not possible, blah, 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 blah. And Trent just keeps asking him, okay, but that assumes that you have a criteria of proof and evidence, and that you know what is and isn't sufficient. But you're saying that you can't presume to have that. So Matt is literally talking out of both sides of his mouth.
Said, I have no idea what a hygrometer looks like, but I know I haven't seen one. Seems like you've left yourself open to, you've missed it because you don't know what it looks like.
I would never say, if I don't know what a hygrometer looks like, I would never say I know that I haven't seen one.
Okay.
I could not say that I haven't seen something I don't know. What I'm saying is that, so in all the opportunities for somebody to present sufficient evidence, what they have presented are fallacies and testimony. There's no physical evidence. There's nothing that would rise to the level of being admissible in a courtroom.
Matt, actually, testimonies are admissible in courtrooms, which you said you don't accept. I mean, does Matt not know that, like, courtrooms use testimonies of witnesses?
Okay. Well, at least in a courtroom, and I've heard you make this analogy before, and I think it's problematic for claims related to history, because a courtroom is not actually ordered towards finding the truth. There are biases in the courtroom to prevent the punishment of the innocent.
Correct.
So, I mean,
those biases are... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
I didn't mean to.
Well, we can't try somebody twice, even if we get new evidence. Like, it's slated so that we'd rather let a guilty person go free. It's not just about finding truth. It seems like I'm wary of those kinds of analogies. I think we should say, well, what does the evidence point to this in the past? And for me, go ahead.
That's the foundation of my epistemology, which is what I pointed out in the opening. This whole notion about the bias in the courtroom to avoid punishing the innocent is exactly the same thing as I have a bias in my epistemology to avoid being conned.
Oh, you see, Matt, exactly. Thank you. So now we get Matt's epistemology, which he couches as a way to avoid being conned, but which he doesn't realize is actually his own way to wait and reject the evidence such that nothing will count to convince Matt of anything other than what he finds psychologically convincing. So Matt is basically admitting that I will determine the criteria of evidence and what counts as evidence for me, and nothing else can be evidence. And so therefore, since God does not meet the standard of evidence that I demand, there is no God. There you go. Matt doesn't even realize that that's what he's done. So I think we'll end it there, because I mean, Matt really just isn't even getting the point.
And duped into believing something that isn't true. I want to believe as many true things as possible and as few false things as possible. And you have to have both.
Okay, but Matt, to talk about the true and the false requires a criteria of truth making. And it requires an account of epistemology, and your empiricism and skepticism by definition can't do that. But Matt cannot figure that out. So
divinity raises the humanity of Christ through theosis, and that's exactly what we experience.